think so.
Okay.
But we probably should stay on schedule, Karen, so we're gonna start, I think any second now, it's 5:29. And when you let me know we're on, I'll. Okay, we're on, and here comes Town Attorney Jesse. Well, welcome everybody to the May 18th, 2023 Webster Town Board Workshop. In this afternoon's workshop, it's kind of a different format because we have actually 4 firms that are going to be presenting off of what was I want to use the right term, Josh, an RFQ, an RFP that we had put out a couple months ago pertaining to the grants that we're hoping that the town is going to be able to identify, apply for, and get awarded. So we're looking for some help for some consulting firms to navigate us through that process. And I think we had 12 apply or submit. Yeah, and then Josh, I think it was you and Chris Bilo, several of you were the vetting committee on those?
That's correct.
Okay, and from those, and I think you used a metric base to try to make it objective grading and all that. The final 4, and they're here tonight, and our first presenter is MRB. Come on up, gentlemen.
Thanks so much. All right, so my name is Matt Horn. I'm the Director of Local Government Services for MRB Group, and you all probably know Paul Chatfield, my colleague, who's a Senior Project Manager at MRB Group. It's likely that you know MRB Group because we've certainly done work with the town over a bunch of years, and I know Paul has been a fixture in the region in terms of infrastructure support and helping communities get where they want to be from an asset standpoint. And in the last 5 years, MRB Group has started to evolve into what we would call kind of a total solutions firm, a total local government solutions firm. I joined the firm about 5 years ago. I'm a former city manager. I was the city manager of Geneva for about 10 years and worked as an assistant city manager and economic developer around the country. And MRB Group, I was a client. Geneva was a client, and when I decided it was time to try something new, MRB Group brought me on to start a local government services practice, which now includes planning, economic development, GIS systems, organizational health for local governments, and our favorite, and typically our client's favorite, come on in, sir, typically our client's favorite, grant services. And we've been really proficient with grants, and we've had a lot of successes over the years, and we'll dig at that a bit. We've oriented this particular presentation based on the guidance we received from Mary to really focus in on your priority project, on a couple of funding sources that we've identified from or with respect to that project, and then to talk a little bit about our process and the steps we think we'd probably take first to get things moving. I'll say to start out, Paul teaches a capstone class at RIT, and he has me in from time to time to talk about public speaking. So I'm nervous having a master standing off my right. So pardon me. So the team you've probably saw in the RFP, and the team that will be most hands-on with this project. There are 4 of us. I would serve as your project manager. At MRB Group, we try to work, when we have an effort or an initiative like this, we try to work so that you only have to call one person. You don't have to think about who's managing what part of the project. So your single point of contact on this project would be me. But we also say, if you're more comfortable, you'll see Paul certainly on a number of other projects. Any of the people on this list, you'll have their direct line. If you have a specific question for one of those folks, you could dive in. We talk about being a practitioner-based team. On our team is Mark Blast. So I'm a former manager. Mark's a current mayor. He's the mayor of Little Falls, New York, and he is our community development grant lead. So all of the grants that deal with planning and economic development fall to his side of the coin. And Lori Fox, who's worked with Paul for years and years and years, is our infrastructure grant lead. And as you all know, this project and a lot of the other initiatives that you've got kind of on your plate will fall usually not on one side of the coin or the other, but on both sides, right? This is most certainly an economic development initiative, as well as an infrastructure project, a parks project, a community development project. So we see this as an all-hands effort. Mike Lindola is a colleague of ours who advises us on economic development. He's got a long track record of serving communities in the economic development world. And then, of course, you know Paul, who's an infrastructure advisor and all-around good guy. So our approach to grants generally, we work with dozens and dozens of clients on their grants needs. We work with probably a couple dozen clients specifically. They hired us just to do grants for them. And when we walk into a situation like that, where we've got a new client and they've hired us just to do grants work, we typically start out with needs identification. Outside of the project we're talking about today, if we were selected, we would first go to work on that project because we're under some tight deadlines with CFA. But once we move past CFA, we'd still recommend doing this. We want to sit down with your staff leadership and your elected leadership and say, what's everything you're looking at? What's on your plate? Do a real needs assessment top to bottom, and then ask you, what are the priorities? What are your priority projects? We feed this into a client needs database that we use, and then we filter it for grant programs that are released over time. So what will happen is CFA was released this week, Monday. When I say CFA, I'm talking about the New York State Consolidated Funding Application Round. It was released on Monday. So a couple dozen programs were released as part of that. That set off a lot of bells in our client needs database. And so right now, actually earlier this week, our clients were receiving emails saying, yep, New York Main Street was released. Yes, Restore New York was released. Yes, We Up has been released. We Up was released a week or so ago. Now it's time for us to get to work, right? So we've done the needs assessment. We've got a prioritization from you. Then we move into competitiveness assessment. I'm not a no guy. I'm a yes guy, which is why Paul doesn't take me on a lot of sales calls. But I want to say yes to everything. But my favorite place to say no is grants, because we don't want to submit a grant application that's not going to be successful. So what we do is when we identify a priority, like the one you've identified tonight, we will look at all of the competitive factors of the grant program itself and say, here's what the community looks like, here's what the project looks like, here's what the town's prepared to do financially on this project, here's what the state demands, or the federal government or the private fund or what they demand. Is this project likely to be funded? If the answer is no, we tell you the answer. It's a long shot. This is a Hail Mary. And we'll show you some Hail Marys tonight just to show you what they look like. It's a Hail Mary. A Hail Mary means we only get paid when you tell us to start writing the grant, right? All that needs assessment stuff, competitiveness analysis, we're going to do that in the normal course of business. You'll never receive a bill for that. When you tell us to go, that's when the meter starts running. So we want to make sure that there's a high likelihood that you're going to be funded. So you look at the competitiveness assessment. On that competitiveness assessment, it will tell you how much it's going to cost to write the grant. All of our grants are priced at a not to exceed amount, so you'll know upfront, here's what the cost is to write this grant. And you can be rest assured that you won't see a bill over and above that for grant writing. You give us the thumbs up. Looks good, Matt. Looks like we're competitive. The price is fair. It always is. It's MRB, right? The price is fair. And we go to work. So in our application development, we pull our entire team. I showed those 4 people that'll be working directly on this. On the local government side, we have about 20 people who are focused on community and economic development. And then, of course, MRB has, in Rochester alone, 100 design professionals who are focused on the infrastructure side. So we start to pull that project apart, start to pull those grant application questions apart, feed them in to the CFA. The CFA is a pretty formulaic thing. There are lots of other programs out there, and we run through a similar process. We submit it, we wait, and then we celebrate when the big cardboard check comes to town, right? Side here. Can you flip that forward? So, as a kind of mini exercise and in alignment with what you all had hoped to see tonight, we looked at a program, we looked at the full CFA package. And to be honest, and we'll talk about a few programs that we saw that could be matches, but that aren't matches yet. But the big bell that rang when your project was kind of run through our system was the Environmental Protection Fund, the Parks program. Environmental Protection Fund has about a half dozen or so programs that are funded inside of it. They have a specific parks program. So this is a very typical competitiveness analysis. I'm going to talk loud so I can move away from the mic for a second. But in our competitiveness analysis, we say, all right, the agency is Parks and Rec, Office of Parks, Rec, and Historic Preservation. It's a state agency. It's a CFA project. All the CFA projects are due July 28th this year. So we have to get to work on it pretty quickly. The maximum award you can receive under this program is $500,000, or 50% of the total project. Our initial read on this budget was about a little over $2 million, and so if you just received this grant, your total match outlay would be everything over and above $500,000. We also look at the application considerations. What are we going to do and what are you going to have to do between the time you give us the green light and the time we have to click submit? So first we say what's eligible in the parks program. All your design costs are eligible for reimbursement. All your construction, most equipment, if you're installing the equipment at the site. So in your project you had listed some interpretive features for education or that type of thing. We're going to work to squeeze those into the budget and get a thumbs up on them. So most of the project elements we saw were eligible for reimbursement. It does require seeker, and this is a time suck, right? So if we were going to move on this project, we have to start moving now or quickly, because we're going to need both the June meeting and the July meeting to move through seeker if it hadn't already been completed on this project. So that's something that we would pick up on in discovery. The other thing that's tough is that on these projects, and if you've ever received a DASNY grant or a SAM grant, Senator Nozzolio used to be great for delivering those SAM grants. If you ever got one of those, you had to find the actual demonstration of ownership. And that can take time on some of these parcels, older parcels, things like that. A lot of communities don't have it together as well as Webster does, and so finding those ownership documents can be tricky. So we tell you on day one, you got to find them, go dig them up, because we'll need to include it in the application. The great news is you may include local funds and any non-environmental protection funds that have been expended in the last 3 years. So likely you've already done some design work. We know you have done some design work on that project. If it was done in the last 3 years, we can count it in this budget, and you'd be eligible for reimbursement on it, right? So now we've gotten the particulars. We know what the considerations are. We think we can get it done in the time frame that we've got in front of us. So we start to look at competitiveness factors. The state rates county by county, issue by issue. No problem. Oh, sorry. I'll hold it. There you go.
Great, thank you.
Sure. The state rates every county in terms of Parks and Rec assets. Monroe County scores pretty high, which of course in government means bad, right? High means you're well served, which is bad for grants. But there are deficiencies in Monroe County, and they don't look at it on a town-by-town level. They look at it on county-by-county. There are deficiencies in walking and biking facilities, which this project is strong with. So we would highlight the walking and biking facilities that are part of this project. Also showing some deficiency, not the worst in the world, on fishing and boating, which you have here, and so we think that could make it competitive. They want to serve areas that are dense, so we're going to shout about Monroe County, even though we're not talking about downtown Rochester here, but we're also not in the middle of nowhere, right? So this facility is likely to serve dense communities and even some underserved communities, which would be a strong competitive piece. You get some extra points if you show up on the commissioner's radar, the Parks Commissioner's radar for his priorities. His priorities this year are walkable spaces and resiliency-based projects. Check, check. Very strong with respect to the commissioner's points here. And then the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council also gets to weigh in, and they're going to ask, how does this line up with our priorities? The regional council's priorities feature prominently Lake Ontario, right? Can you tie this project to Lake Ontario? Can you tie this project to key recreational assets that are what they would say are of state importance? Can you put that forward again? So that's the Environmental Protection Fund. We did identify a couple of others. Can you advance the slide? Josh, sorry about that. Okay. So this one was what I wouldn't call it a Hail Mary, but I would call it like a 4th and 15 or 4th and 20. Empire State Development has what they call Market New York, which is their tourism development fund. The marketing pieces, or the project information that we received didn't show an intense focus on marketing, or on tourism, I should say, but we saw this as a potential tourism asset for Monroe County. And so we thought, if we were going to take a shot at something, this might be what we take a shot at. The agency is Empire State Development. It's a CFA, so it's due on the 28th. $150,000 reward requires about an 80% match. All design and construction costs are eligible, but you can't use any other state grants as a match. But that's okay because it only covers 20% of your project costs, and the max award is $150,000, so you have plenty of non-state government funds in there. The other thing about this, most grants are, all grants that I know of are reimbursable grants. Most grants that we work with are reimbursing quarterly installments. This one you get at the very end if you do everything they said you were supposed to do. If you trip up, they'll hold reimbursement. I see Matt nodding his head. That's an ESD hallmark right there. You got to get the whole project done, and you got to get it done the way they said. So the reason we thought this was worth a look, again, a 4th and 15 look, is very strong. What ESD says is we want a strong connection to an internationally recognizable asset. Lake Ontario is clearly that. A focus on outdoor recreation opportunities, clearly that. Reinforcement of community infrastructure, clearly that. And a focus on water resources. The only reason this shows up as a bit of a mid to long shot for us is that it really does feel like, and the narrative we're going to sing on the Environmental Protection Fund application is a recreation asset, a local regional recreation asset. Then the narrative we have to sing on Market New York is we're going to bring people from Minnesota here to fish off of this particular pier. And that's okay. We're good at that. We can sing that song. It's just the Parks one is so much of a stronger match, but this is a match too. So when you got this, if we rank competitiveness on a 0 to 10, this is a 5, 5.5. The Environmental Protection Fund is an 8.5, 9, right? Next slide. You all know, any Bills fans in the room, you all know Ralph C. Wilson. Ralph C. Wilson Jr. established a foundation for recreation assets in the area that they specifically look at this region, Monroe County included. They specifically look at what they call active lifestyles, parks and trails. This checks both boxes. It's a rolling deadline, so we don't have to jump on it immediately. We can get that CFA out of the way and then come back to this. There is no maximum award, but there is a 66% match, so they would only fund up to 30%, 33% of the project, 34%. What I will say is, if you did win this, it could be considered match for your EPF project or your Market New York project, either one of those, because it's non-state fund. We would just get you registered with the foundation via their online portal. We want to show tremendous community support for this. We want to do that on both projects. So anything you've done up to this point to rally the community around your project and all the support you're seeing from the community, we're going to demonstrate that in all of these efforts. Right? Next slide, please. So future, beyond this year, you've already received a local waterfront revitalization program grant, an LWRP grant. I love that money. It's good money to spend, and it's really, it's a low match. You got it for the project that's active today. So when you complete that project, we can come back and get phase 2 of LWRP to support future work in this area. In Geneva, if you've been there recently, along the Geneva waterfront, along the Seneca Lake shoreline, about $7 million worth of improvements in the last bunch of years. Trails, just like this, trails, docks, some interpretive stuff. $7 million, the state paid for half, over 4 phases. Build it, apply next year. Build it, apply next year. And they just kept funding it. If you do what's right, they'll keep funding you. Last couple of years, we've seen a surge in what they call congressionally directed spending, which is the government's way of trying not to say the word earmark, but that's what that is. federal earmarks. So we'll see if Congress can play nice, and if those continue to play out. New York's received a big chunk of those. Smaller communities in the region have received lots of those. Decent dollars, millions of dollars to each community. So no match is explicitly required, but they don't fund those at 100%. And that's a long process, right? We submit in the spring, you get on Senator Schumer's list, you get on the congressman's list, you get on Senator Gillibrand's list, and then you wait for the budget to come out. And then in 2024, they get you a contract. And then on the programming side, once you're ready to program this thing, there are so many nonprofits and foundation funders that want to address projects like this from a programmatic standpoint, not a capital standpoint. And partnering with groups like the Economic Development Alliance, who does have a nonprofit status, Friends of the Webster Trails, also nonprofit, they love to do partnerships like that. Next slide. So from a CFA standpoint, we talked about we're a little bit under the gun. So we would hope to be selected today. We can have everybody else leave if you want, but we'd hope to be selected soon, in the next week or two, so we could begin work quickly. As soon as we get the nod, we're going to come right in and meet with staff and download as much information as we can get. A little bit prior to that, we're going to tell you how much we think it's going to cost to write any application that you think we should move forward on during the CFA. If you haven't, and we didn't dig at this to see if you had already commenced with a seeker on this piece of the project, then we would ask you in June to pick up seeker and to close out seeker in July ahead of that July deadline. Next slide, please. So, in closing, this is one of the things that our clients love about us, and it's what we love doing, and it's because we're really successful at it. In the last two grant cycles, we've earned $100 million for our clients. And some of those are very substantial awards. I think our biggest award was $30 million to the Water Authority, Wayne County Water Authority, $10 million to the Village of Newark for their DRI, Downtown Revitalization Initiative, and then a bunch of $2 and $3 million projects that all added up to about $100 million over the last couple of grant cycles. That's against close to $1 billion in capital investment by the community, which is fantastic. We've worked well with the town of Webster. We're working well with the town of Webster today. We enjoy it right here in our backyard. We're working today with your staff, so we know the community. It won't take us long at all to get up to speed. And as you know, we're a relationships firm, so we typically don't usually get into one-off projects. Do one in this community, and then one in that community, and then another one down there. We love to build a relationship, and we think our skill set between infrastructure, engineering, architecture, facilities, parks, planning, economic development, and local government operations, we've got experts in all of those fields, and we can support you on grants, certainly in all of those fields, but also just in your general day-to-day needs. Paul, what I missed?
I'd just like to just say that from the standpoint of the excitement that I have for working on these infrastructure projects like the highway building and the pump station projects and the treatment plant projects, Matt shares that excitement with the grants, as you can see. And we have been very successful. One thing I just want to point out is that my capstone class about 5 years ago did the sandbar project design as the class project. A couple of groups before the planning started. So it's neat to see the project moving forward. So I know the time frame probably ran over a bit.
Not bad.
I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I don't think we'll have time for questions only because, I don't know, we have another board meeting and a regular board meeting after this.
Yep.
So we have to keep on schedule. One thing I did not mention in the preface to this is that I did say, Josh, that you guys had a metric-based objective factors that created the final four, and MRB presented first in this work. But the exercise that was given to each of these firms was the same one, which is the Phase 2 Education Center at Sandbar Park. Yes. So I should have mentioned that because you know, it's very difficult to make an objective, metric-based decision on a consultant, because so much of it is subjective in relationship and creativity and whatever. So we figured, and I give credit to Josh and Mary and the crew, that they thought that this was the best way for the board to maybe see 4 different firms and how they had approached this. So, you sure, Dan?
It's very brief, and I may have missed it during your introduction, but you put forth a great team here. I know that both you and Paul are local. How about the other 3 members?
So Lori Fox, who would take the lead on grant writing, she works right at Culver Road. Michael Angola, who is an advisor on the economic development side, works in Saratoga along with Mark. I work at Culver Road also.
Thank you.
So, thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We purposely kept everybody outside because we didn't want them to hear what you had to say, you know, and then come in and mimic you. So,
Good, thank you.
appreciate
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And next up tonight, was Josh, CNS. Pardon? Yes, but the handouts for them in here. We did not, okay. And Josh, is the name of the firm CNS, or is that an acronym for? It's CNS? CNS, there you go. MRB, CNS. So, are the ladies or gentlemen here from CNS?
They're going out to get them.
They're going out to get them.
And thank you for clarifying.
They're in the green room.
I had a question.
They're in the green.
Oh, you.
Thank you.
What are subs?
They're in the lounge. With their son. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very timely. And one thing, I mean, MRB, and they alluded to it, they're the engineer on the highway project.
Yes.
So we are working with them. Well, come on in.
Hello.
Yes. I don't know if Karen's got you queued up on any screen that you'll be presenting on, or? The presentation, do you have any handouts for the presentation? Yeah, you do. Well, that'd be great. And now I'll let you all introduce yourself. Sure. Yeah. We'll pass it along. Thank you. All right. So I think we're going with that. I'll just pass what I got left. And hope it's enough. All right, well, welcome.
You guys ready? Okay.
Yes.
Should I speak? Okay,
Yeah.
that works, all right.
Yes.
All right, we're with CNS Engineers. We thank you very much for the opportunity to present here today. We're certainly excited about the opportunity to potentially work with you on this. My name is Seth Kuiper. I'm here with Emma Phillips and Sarah Stewart. I have 29 years of experience in transportation. I lead CNS's transportation group out of the Rochester office. And I'm also a 24-year Webster resident. So I participate heavily in Webster activities. We haven't had the opportunity to work directly with the town of Webster on a professional level, but we have completed a number of projects in the town. Most recently, the Lake Road Phase 2 project, which you probably are aware of, down from Lake to Pellet. Worked with Pat a lot on that. That we recently were notified that was a statewide APWA award winner. So even though we have not worked directly with the town, we do quite a bit of work within the town and have coordinated with the town quite often. So the talent here with me today, is Emma Phillips. Emma Phillips has strong experience in urban planning and grant writing assistance. She has literally brought in millions of dollars for local municipalities across upstate New York following grant opportunities. She is currently leading the $15 million DRI project for the city of North Tonawanda, so she's got a lot of experience. And then also we have Sarah Stewart, who is going to be our project manager on the project. She is our grant writer. She has over 20 years of experience. She joined CNS last year and has already brought in a number of grant opportunities for local municipalities. Prior to CNS, she has worked basically on your side of the fence with organizations bringing in funding on both the federal and state level. So I will now turn it over to the stars of the show, Emma and Sarah.
Do we have a clicker or do we just say next slide?
Just let me know.
Next slide, please. That's fun. Next slide again, please. Great. All right. So my name is Emma Phillips. Seth has lived here for a very long time, but I also have fond memories of Webster. My grandfather worked for Kodak, of course. They lived right off of Holt Road. So I'm very happy to be back here. I have fond memories of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about our approach with grant writing and how we go about that. So first, of course, we assess those goals and what you want to accomplish within your community. Discussions with the town, or review any planning documents that you have, and then we just need a full picture of any short, medium, or long-term goals that you have, and knowing every single detail, even though it might be tedious, knowing every single goal is helpful for us because then we can set you up for success in the future and always be on the lookout for any grant opportunities that may arise. We research funding sources for all aspects of the project. So of course, we're talking about a very specific project today, but other projects have different components to them. They might have transportation-related aspects, it might be environmental related, they might be energy related through NYSERDA. We cover all those bases, have information about all those grant funding sources, and make sure that we're up to date on all of them. And then we determine that potential phasing and timing of a project. We use our internal expertise that I'll talk about in a second to really know and have a good grasp on what's needed to get that project done. Having engineers, whether it be transportation, site civil, mechanical, having urban planners on our staff, environmental scientists, and of course Sarah as a grant writer, really allows us to see the whole picture of a grant and make sure that we don't miss a single thing in that grant application. Because as we know, the worst part is getting your grant funding and being like, great, we're gonna do this project, and then you need another $500,000 to complete another phase of it. We don't wanna leave anything out, so we have a full range of experts to make that happen. Next slide, please. A little bit about our experts at CNS. We really try to leverage our internal expertise in any grant application that we do. It's never just Sarah alone writing a grant for the town of Webster. It's 500 CNS employees that have your back. We have talented landscape architects like Mike Ridley, sustainability initiatives from Olin Huxley, engineering initiatives, Eric Knopf, and environmental initiatives from Dan Riker. So anything that comes up, those folks are willing and able to help at a given notice. If it's a new grant that maybe no one's heard of before, or a grant that's been around for 20 years, we can complete that successful funding for you. Next slide, please. And I'm going to let Sarah talk about potential funding for the project.
Okay, so this is a specific project. So what we did was kind of look really quickly to see what's out there, what could potentially help fund this project or this phase of your Sandbar Park project. And again, this isn't comprehensive, this isn't everything, this is what we can put together now. Obviously, if we were doing this work for you, we'd have a lot more here. But I just wanted to go through a few of these really quickly. Some of the New York State sources that we thought might be useful are listed here. Obviously, you're very familiar with the LWRP, I would assume that helped fund your phase one of this project. But that is still something you could look into, the implementation grants. It does have a high maximum of $3 million, so it's very accessible. We do have experience with that as well. We've done quite a few, particularly Emma here, has done quite a few LWRPs in the past for different municipalities, particularly the city of Jamestown, which I believe she's going to talk about in just a second. So that's a useful one. The other one, in these two New York State ones, if you're all familiar with the CFA, these just came out this week, so it's very exciting. So there's another grant for the Parks Preservation and Heritage Program. This one is, it's a smaller maximum, a higher match, that 50% match, so it's not quite as appealing as the LWRP. But it is there, it is something to think about for some of the construction aspects of your project. On the federal level, there's a couple options to think about. The first one obviously says New York State, but it is the Transportation Alternatives Program through the DOT. That is technically a federal program that comes through the federal dollars come through the state. And those can range from $500,000 to $5 million. So there are some aspects of your project that, there might be, some of the connecting roads or the boardwalk, things like that could fit under this program if you wanted to look into that. And it's another program that we have a lot of experience with. We've worked with several places for TAP funds. We've most recently worked with the city of North Tonawanda to help them get over $1 million for a bike path extension in their city. Another federal grant that might be useful is there is that aspect of your project that's education related, right? You want to have programming there for kids, for adults, and those might not be funded through those construction type grants. So this specific environmental education grant through the EPA could be useful for you. It should be available this year. It's not a lot of money, it's up to $100,000, but for educational programming that kind of fits. We at CNS have a lot of experience with EPA grants, particularly the brownfield program. So we really know the EPA grants in and out, how the applications should look, excuse me, and how grants are administered. So we have quite a bit of experience with the EPA. Next slide, please. And then a couple, I know you were very interested in things other than state and federal, maybe some non-governmental type. There's a couple things here that, again, we pulled out really quickly. You think about the Genesee Transportation Council when you think about some of the aspects of your project that might be connecting the roads if you wanted to do lighting, safety aspects. That's something to discuss with them. I'm sure you're very familiar with them, but something you could talk about. Another grant that I thought might be useful is the New York's Great Lakes Basin Small Grants. It's a organization that's kind of a conglomeration of the SUNY system and Cornell University. They're not governmental, but they do take some funds from the DEC. It's a nice little program. They do it every year. It's up to $50,000. It's not a lot of money, but I did notice in some of their past awards, they specifically have funded several kayak launches, which I know that's part of your project, so that might be just that aspect of your project might just fit perfectly there. So that's a nice one to think about that's not governmental. And then again, the Ralph Wilson Foundation, that's out of Buffalo. They do fund all the way out here into Monroe County. And they have a Parks, Trails, and Green Design grant that it seems like would be a nice fit. Your project would be a nice fit for. It's a foundation, you want to have the conversations with them first before applying, but that's another aspect. So we laid out all these to kind of get towards where I think you wanted to know a little bit about was how to keep that match as low as possible, because you don't want to be on the hook, or your taxpayers be on the hook for such a high match. So it's about weaving together this funding. So it's about picking and choosing and fitting it all together so you can get that match as low as possible. But there is a need to diversify your sources, so you can't match state grants with state grants, you can't match federal grants with federal grants. So you need to sort of look at federal, look at state, and look at these non-governmental and see where they all might fit into different aspects of your project to come together to make that work, and to get that match as low as you possibly can. And at CNS, we have a lot of experience with that. We typically work with large projects like this, and we have a familiarity with a variety of grants, and we are usually able to figure out ways to phase it and to make it all kind of fit so you have the lowest match possible. It covers the most amount of your project as possible. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Emma.
I'll be quick because I know we have a time limit, but I just think it's funny that we say I know 100,000 isn't a lot of money. In the grant writing world, it's not, but in real world, it's I would love that. It's just something funny that we say. A few grants and project pipelines that we want to talk about, because the grants are very important. They make the project possible, but getting the project to the end result is also very important. One of the things that we did for the city of Portland was write their EPA grant. That was after doing their Brownfield Opportunity Area program. They received an EPA grant for $200,000, which led to phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessments. That led to a local developer being interested in a property because a free phase 1 and phase 2 is an amazing hook to get a developer interested. We linked up with that local developer and talked to them about the brownfield cleanup program. That gives local developers lots of tax incentives to redevelop old brownfield properties within communities that aren't doing so well. That local developer is now redeveloping the Gillette skirt factory, which has been abandoned for many, many years, was once really, really important to Portland's history. So that's a really nice story about how we just started with a brownfield opportunity area grant and ended up with great affordable housing in that community that really needed it. Next slide, please. And then Sarah noted this earlier, but the City of Jamestown LWRP grant, we helped write a $1.2 million LWRP grant in 2021 following a Chattacoin River strategic business plan for the City of Jamestown. If you've ever been to the City of Jamestown, they have this really beautiful meandering Chattacoin River that goes through their city that's right behind the National Comedy Center. And it's behind the National Comedy Center that gets all these people there, but then they have no activation of their basin. So people just kind of walk up to the basin, they're like, oh, this is nice, and then they walk away. They don't keep those people there to spend more money in their community and enjoy that waterfront for their local community members. So we wrote this $1.2 million LWRP grant to get a new boating dock, kayak launch, welcome center, tiered seating, and signature gardens going. All those things cost way more than $1.2 million, but the whole goal of those grants is to show that, hey, we took the money, we did something with it, can we have a little bit more? The state loves seeing their money be successful and showing that they're revitalizing the community with those state dollars. So that's also, I think, a really nice story about how we took a planning project to a grant to a project pipeline. And then next slide, please. Am I doing this? All right. Just making sure, I didn't want to take anyone's thunder. So why CNS? There's a lot of words on this board, but I think we said it really well in the presentation, is that we have the knowledge as experts within Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, and a number of other offices across the country that can help you at any given notice. We have the people that really care about helping communities, people like Seth that live here, and people like Sarah and I who, I heard this quote the other day, it was really nice, plant trees in areas where you never enjoy the shade. We care about improving communities, and we want to do that for Webster. Expertise, lots of different disciplines at CNS that can help you if something pops up that wasn't originally part of your grant, and lots of different people who have experience with these grants that can chip in any given time. And of course, the motivation. We always want to help get grants done for communities. We know that without grants, a lot of really big, important projects couldn't be possible, and we have the motivation to help you do that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we just would love to talk about your grants, this project, and any other ways that we can help you with grant opportunities. Thank you.
I gotta tell you, because you've been dealing with Mary Harrington a lot too, what I really like is that you stuck to the script of the certain amount of minutes to present, leaving time for questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions from board members, from the dais up here?
To be consistent with my questions, you mentioned your full service team and all those that you have to help other than who's here presented tonight. Thank you for being here. Are they all local?
Do you want to answer? Yeah.
No, they are not all local. We have about 25 people in the Rochester office. As Emma mentioned, we have about 500 company-wide. So we are only at about 25 in Rochester. But I'm in Rochester, and we've got strong expertise there. And we're a fully functional office in Rochester. Like I mentioned, we handle large projects. Finished up the Lake Road project, $8.5 million. So we are fully functional and ready to help you.
Thank you.
A question on that, I mean, the Lake Road project, Keeler was the contractor. Did you guys do the engineering, or did you get grants for the county, or both?
But, no, we didn't get grants. It was a county locally funded project, but we did the engineering. We did the design, and then we oversaw construction. So we dealt with all the neighbors up there during construction. We're still recovering from that.
And you still live in Webster?
I have to hide sometimes.
Yes. Very nice people, but yes.
And congratulations on the award for design.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Very nice presentation.
Thank you.
A lot of
Appreciate
energy.
that.
I like that.
I thought I'd just add on to the motivation piece. I know that, every firm is going to come in here and say that, they're client focused and we care about you. But that is something that we really take to heart at CNS. It is a mantra of ours that if we do the work right, the success will come. It is not, we don't look at it the opposite way. We're not looking to make a lot of money. We're looking to help communities and do right by the community. And with that, the success will come to us. And I hope the people that have dealt with us before, Pat can probably, I keep singling out Pat because we've dealt with him on a number of occasions. But we're responsive, we're here to help you, and we're really excited to potentially work with you. So I appreciate the time and the opportunity here.
Thanks.
Have you had any success in taking a look at federal money that might be buried in these multi-trillion-dollar bills that have passed over the past few years? Not necessarily grants, but federal earmark money.
Yep, Sarah can probably talk better to that. On the transportation side, we had learned that a lot of the, like the program that, like New York State DOT, Monroe County, GTC, on the transportation side, has already kind of incorporated that into there. So there are the
To push it down to the grant.
Yep. But there are definitely grants that probably Sarah can mention as well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay, our height difference is really crazy. So, yeah, I've done a lot of digging into the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Yep.
It's a mouthful, and the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of money, I mean, it's a massive amount of money, and it is filtering through, so it's gone to a lot of places, but it is coming through, so I mean, yeah, there's a lot of it, it's mostly going through grants and formula grants like to the states, and there's tax credits and things, but the federal earmarks are always something you gotta pay attention to. I think that's gonna be a separate thing. But there are mechanisms to get the money. You just have to have a good relationship with your elected officials.
The other thing I've heard is that, a lot of the extra funding is discretionary. And so you're competing against other municipalities. And one thing that they're looking for is a planning level analysis or investment already. If you've got a survey done or things like that. So they're looking for what we do to, have that. So you're not just throwing out an idea and say, hey, this is going to cost us $2 million. Can we get $2 million? You've done the research, and so that they can feel comfortable that the money's going to be spent well.
Makes sense.
And updating your current comprehensive plan will help with that. So, very exciting initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Appreciate it. Hey, next up, ESP Consulting. Are they in the green room there?
Yeah, I'm afraid of it. I'd like to confirm on that, the board, that it was a good experience on Lake Road. They did a good job at handling resident interaction, the way we tried to all the time with the highway department on local projects. It was a big project up there. They were out there every day, them and their staff, about 1 minutes. They did do an excellent job up there in my opinion.
Their EPA experience bodes
Do
well.
you want to jump up? No? No?
Hi.
Hello, this is the ESP Consulting.
Here it is, in all its glory.
How are you?
Hi,
Hi,
how you doing?
good.
Great.
Are you solo tonight?
Yes, is that
All
okay?
right.
I can carry it. I think I got everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, if I put the column right there.
Oh, yes, the dreaded column.
Thank you, you know, you got me. I do have copies of my presentation if you guys want to be looking at it.
Great.
And or the thumb drive. Where's the thumb drive?
I believe, did you email it to us?
And I emailed it.
I've already got it up for you.
God, I'm virtual. Okay. That's my own heart. Hi. Hello. Hello.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Wonderful. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hi. Hello. You? I'm great. How are you? Good. sharing. You don't want mine.
So, good. So,
All right, you guys are friends, right?
all right, perfect.
Okay, all right, good. If you're not friends, you should be.
That's right.
Well, hi, I'm Emily, Emily Columbus, or Emily, yeah, well, please.
Emily,
Mike,
Karen, who's doing the video and audio, might want you to use the microphone.
But you can take it.
Take it off.
Yes, I can do all of it.
There you
Let me know what works for you.
There you
As
go.
long as
Thank
you have
you.
the mic.
Okay, great. Yeah, I always feel like I'm hiding back here. I'm like, I got dressed for a reason.
You don't have
So, well, thank you for letting me be here tonight and present. I'm honored to be here. This is actually the first RFQ I've answered, so I haven't done them much. Luckily, I haven't needed to. Grant writing is in very high demand, but I'm very honored to be here tonight and to be here with you guys and to talk to you about ESP consulting. And did receive the information on the presentation, and you'll notice that I'm very different from the other groups that come in, and based on that, I'd like to actually do my presentation a little bit differently, if that's okay as well. You guys requested kind of, what can you do for us for this project? And as someone who is skilled and a grant writing specialist, the best way that I can help you is to give you as much information as you want from me. So to allow you guys to ask questions about grant writing and or why you would go after one grant or not another, or why it would be smart to go with an engineering firm that has everything you could possibly imagine, you know, plus fruit baskets, as opposed to a small company that is directly geared towards grant writing. So I certainly do have a presentation with information that follows the guidelines, but I do certainly want to invite you to ask me questions at any time, because engaging in grant writing and grant services is a huge step. And it's a huge commitment, especially if you're going to be bringing on a firm and you want to feel comfortable with that firm and you want to feel that you can talk to them. And particularly when it comes to these people, the heads and directors of the different departments, that you have someone you can talk to and say, is this right? Does this look normal? Because I work with municipalities and I've worked in government for years, and you're the ones who get emails from vendors. They're like, hey, look at this grant, free money. And it's not. And it's not free money. And if you don't have someone you can send it to and say, is this real? Now you're wasting your time on it, trying to read it and understand it. And that's how I help a number of different communities as far as being able to advise them. So this is me. Next slide, please. Okay, customized approach. Clearly, I'm not your average grant writer. I'm not someone who you would want to find sitting in a dark room writing a lot, but I love it, and I'm extremely good at it, and I didn't intend to do it. I wanted to be on Broadway, obviously, but my dad was like, so you want to be a waitress? And I was like, damn it. Like, no, I'll go to college for politics. But I went into government, and I love government, and so many years of government. I then, 20 years later, read a grant and was like, I wish that's what it was like when I took my Spanish test in 8th grade. Like, I actually understood it. It's a different language. Government is its own language, and the way government works is its own language. And that's where my skill set comes in, is understanding different levels of government. I started in the Monroe County Legislature. That's 25 years ago. And I also worked in New York City for the Director of Consumer Affairs, and New York State. I interned for Governor Pataki, and also worked in the New York State Assembly, and also federal government, and worked at U.S. Homeland Security. So being able to work across these different agencies and in the agencies really gave me an understanding of how these agencies work, how they communicate, and how the money flows. And that's where I focus. And worked, in the government with these agencies and also, across different areas and different positions. And I'm really, really good at what I do.
Can I take you up on you said we could ask questions?
Anything,
What the
anytime.
heck, as long as we're, so your experience, these 25 years, then you went into your firm. How long is your firm? How long have you been running the firm?
I'm about a year and a half old.
No kidding.
Yeah, well, I went to MRB Group. I started doing marketing there, and someone asked if I could help with a grant. And I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, do I get this? I was like, bring on more of this. And within 6 months, they started a grant department, which I ran. First year was, well, when I wasn't running it, 60,000. My first year was 10 million. Second year, I brought in 20 million to Finger Lakes, and then so on. And then I was like, I want to do this for who I want to work with, and on my terms, and on my ethics. I'm not in it to potentially get a project, 2 years down the line. I'm not in it to run a planning project or run your planning board. I'm in it for the long haul and at an entire level. I want to bring the entire community up. And yes, I'm very good at engineering grants, but I'm also really good at local government records management improvement fund grants, which is digitizing records. And last week I wrote a grant for a boiler. You don't have to be specialized in what you're writing so much, but understanding the grant and what they're asking for. And that's where that's where my skill set lies. So next slide. Phasing. So you guys said phasing, so I'm going to go by your interpretation, but I just kind of took it out of context. So when you write a grant, the phasing is strategy. My strategy, and again, we're kind of interviewing each other here, is I'm community focused. I want the community and every department in it to have access to understanding funding. And if you go project focused, that's great, but the real value comes when you can look at your entire community, identify the priorities, and then find which grants fit those priorities. And what's helpful there too is that so many grants come out. And if it's priority 6, yeah, there's a grant, but every grant takes time and staff and resources. You really don't want to be working on priority number 6. We want to look at the top 3, 4 priorities, which you guys have identified, but across the entire community and across the town and across the departments. Because the community is only as strong as its weakest department. Not that there is one, but. So my strategy is more long-term and community focused. When it comes to a grant, I know there was a request for, here's a list of grants. Means nothing if you're not registered in Grants Gateway. Are you registered in Grants Gateway? Do you know if you're registered in Grants Gateway? Grants Gateway can take 6 weeks. And grants are usually due in 6 weeks. So you can't even be looking at a grant unless you are registered in New York State Grants Gateway. And your SAM registration. Your SAM registration is the federal government. But if you don't have a SAM number, then federal money can't come through to the state or to your community. The Unique Entity Identifier, the UEI number, brand new number. A year ago, April, they took out the DUNS number. We all worked with DUNS numbers, right? Doesn't qualify anymore. Now you have to have a UEI number. So there's a lot of different registrations and portals that you could have the perfect grant come along, but if you're not registered in these portals, it's going to take you longer to register and you're not even going to be able to apply for them. So I work with the community to make sure they've got those registrations ready to go. So the moment the perfect grant comes out, they can apply and can focus on the application itself. And again, priority projects, keep the resources focused and streamlined. And again, when working with communities, you want to look at what have they written before? Did they like that grant? Did they like that agency? Because they're all different. And also, the grant administration. So people get grants, and they think the moment they get the award, that's it. That's when the work begins. That's the grant reporting, that's filling out making sure that you are compatible with what the agency is asking for, are your bid documents done correctly, are you following MWBE? So understanding what your staff or community may or may not have liked about the grant administration, making sure you're prepared to do it so that you do it successfully is extremely important. Because when you are not doing your grant administration correctly, that stays with the community. And the next time you go to apply, the agency is like, oh, we gotta work with those guys. They never get a hold of anybody, or they never get their reporting right. And in grants, the secret is every mistake you make, or every I you don't dot, equals 6 weeks. Because if you do something wrong, the agency's gotta call you back, and then you've gotta fill out the form, and then you gotta go back to the bottom of the pile, and the approval process, it takes time, and time is money. Questions?
Do you assist with the grant administration
Yes.
process? Or
Yep.
right guidance?
Yes, for grant services, I do a lot of, grant advising. That's kind of where that process starts. So I consider advising, research on the town's behalf, the actual writing, and then of course the grant administration too.
This is more a question for anybody in the town. Do we know, are we in the Grant Gateway, are we in SAM, or do we have the unique entity again?
We have all that.
That's good to know.
Director of Finance, nice.
I assumed we did.
We'll take care of it.
You know what
Yeah.
happens when you assume.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that's difficult, Grants Gateway expires every 90 days. SAM registration, you've got to reapply every year. And there are spammers and scammers for the SAM registration. It's free, yet every municipality, based on the fact that there's newly elected officials all the time, and they go after the clerks, is they'll say, your SAM registration is up, and if you don't fix this and pay us $1,000 to do this, you're gonna lose money that you are allowed to, all your grant money. And then you pay that money, and then you're still not even registered in the gateway. And so I've worked with communities who have accidentally done that, because if you're a new clerk and you get something in the mail and they make it look so official, you're gonna do it. I mean, luckily it was on a credit card, we called the credit card company and said it was fraud, but it's gotta be sam.gov, and there are all these sam.com, sam.org, but they actually prey upon municipalities because it is such an important registration. So, and your UEI is right now currently your SAM number until it changes, and now SAM requires 2 logins, personal and organization. The portals are out of control. It's every grant has its own portal, every agency has a portal. They try to group it into the Grants Gateway and grants.gov, but then from there's more portals. So I have to have like 8 spreadsheets of all my logins that expire in 30 days. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Next slide, please. Timing. I know you guys are looking for timing of a grant, but I'm going to give you timing overall. Grants should be long-term. The biggest benefit is when you're committed to working with grants long-term and looking at, and how am I doing on time? Project scope. The best way to get money is to break your project into phases. An agency cannot fund the same project twice. So what you do is you take your project, you break it up into 6 phases, and have them fund each phase. Particularly grants that have multiple categories like planning and then implementation, you apply for the planning, because once you get the planning, how are they not going to give you funding for a project you want to implement that they supported the plan of? So it really can be long. You want to be thinking, based on long term for the project and the most amount of money you can receive. And the other thing to be aware of when it comes to timing is that you may not want to do a grant because grants don't go quickly. Right now, the consolidated funding application came out. Applications will go in at the end of July. It won't be announced until November. And then next March, you'll go under contract. And then you can start spending that money if it was approved. So if you had a project ready to go, you might not want to work with a certain grant because if you start the work, that work's ineligible for reimbursement. So it's very critical to understand what each grant brings to the table, its rules, its eligibility. Because if you don't understand that and you just say, oh, this looks like a big grant, you're gonna bite yourself. You're gonna bite yourself in the foot, doesn't sound right. You're gonna bite the hand that feeds you, doesn't sound right. But you know what I mean. So next slide, please. You guys asked me for a list of eligible sources. I could give you a list of all the grants. That doesn't help you. Knowing you, learning you, working with you in your project and understanding exactly where it is, that helps me recommend to you the best grant. I don't want to write a grant that isn't going to win. And I don't want to turn in a grant to an agency who knows me that isn't great because they know my work. And I don't like to lose. And the most important thing, and actually the more valuable piece that I provide to a number of communities, and I certainly give you a list to talk with, is you might come to me with a grant and I'm going to say, I don't think you should do this grant, and let me tell you why. I remember a village came to me about a grant. Like, oh, we've got a project for this. Yes, you do. But this is geared towards New York City. And they're going to award 2 to upstate New York. And you are a village. You are not going to get it. If you want to go through the exercise, sure. We don't have time to do that. But really, it's hard to put a value and a number on how much money you save when someone is saying to you, you don't want to do that. Oh, great, federal grant, big money, and an audit is coming. And an audit is allowed for 10 years. So you better hope that project is really worth it if there's anything else you don't want to find out. But there's just a lot of, there's a lot that goes with a grant. So I feel like it would be a disservice to provide you a list of grants. I'm sure everyone else has, so I felt good not doing that. And the reality is, you don't know when that grant is available. You don't know if you take that grant, does it mean this grant is ineligible? Did you apply for this grant for this project when in fact, a project you're planning to do in 2 years, which is twice as expensive, you really should have waited and done it for that grant or for that project? So it really is a long-term, it's a strategy, because there is only so much money, and you can only get that money from every agency every so often. So I think sometimes it's even more important to show you what is ineligible as opposed to eligible. And you might be eligible, but are you competitive? That's the next step. Sure, it fits, sounds great, but if it's not going to fit, then there's no reason. Also requirements. Is there a local match, bonding? Sometimes you have to have the full amount secured. And sometimes, like with the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, the WIA money, you have to have a project fully bonded, even though you might get 60% of the money. But going to the public and trying to secure $6 million, that's hard. And there are things that municipalities have to face that an organization or a foundation or a nonprofit doesn't have to, because they have different constituencies. One's answering to a board, one's answering to constituents and residents that pay taxes. And reporting requirements, all that. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Different grants can have multiple funding sources. Don't think, oh, I found a grant for this. You want to think, let's break this into phases. How many grants can we get? Partnerships. When you're working with organizations and you have a 5-year plan and we know we're going to be working with DOT coming down the road, we want to know the regional director of DOT. Your regional rep of DOT needs to know what the project is, or any agency. Get them in here. Give them a personal tour. Once a month, send them updates on what's going on with the grant and what's going on with the project, a newspaper clipping. Making them part of it gets their buy-in. And in the end, everyone who's judging your grant, working with you, they're all human. They all want to be part of it, and they all want to be successful. Grants are political. Anyone who tells you different is deaf, though. They're not being honest. Grants follow the money, and they follow what's going on. And for example, today, New York Council on the Arts came out with all this money. It's not that it just came out, they had to counter all the money they gave to New York City because of the Broadway shows and the films. They're giving it to upstate New York, but we don't have Broadway or film productions, so they're supporting it in different ways. And it's all due in, 4 weeks. Like, So money drops, so being prepared and ready for it is extremely important because it does change. In my example here, like emergency response, after 9/11, there was money for firefighters for days, as there should have been. Try to get firefighting funding now, very difficult. VFWs, different story. With firefighting, that's difficult. The state, when they required training of firefighters, suddenly there was a little bit of money to help with that blow, if you will. But that didn't last long. School safety, that's what's big right now, and literally today, arts and culture. The press release from Hochul's office came out at 10:30 today, and the webinar started at 11. Because they're putting this together and they gotta get the money spent. Part of it's ARPA money, so they need to get it out the door. Last slide, I hope, I don't want to run out of time. Estimate of required match. You don't know, and if I were to tell you what your match was, I'd be lying. It's a shot in the dark. Some grants and per state development, great partners, 20%. Other grants, 50%, but it might be a less amount of money. A grant you might be able to go, it might only be 30%, but you get money for planning and for implementation. So you really want to look at that. You got to look at it more closely if I'm going to give you a real recommendation. And I stand by my recommendations and I don't have enough information. Project integrity. You know, I looked at the project that you guys are looking at, and there's been some time since that project. And if you're going to engage in something this large, you really want to make sure you've got current public support. You really want to make sure you've got committed funding. And yes, you've got stakeholders, but is there money? Because that's difficult when you create a project, talking about the sandbar and the different trails, who takes care of that once it's done? And I help a lot of times kind of work with municipalities through the entire project and making sure it's a reflection of the community, and particularly we just had COVID. I mean, everything's upside down. And also, of course, you want your comprehensive plan to be supportive, and I know that you guys are looking at that. I'll give you a big secret on comprehensive plans. Agencies don't want a comprehensive plan that's more than 10 years old. So if your plan for any project is more than 10 years old, do another public survey. Comprehensive plans. I know you allocated money for it, it was the right thing to do. But it doesn't have to, if you needed a comprehensive plan now, which you do if you're going to need grants, don't redo the entire comprehensive plan. Write an addendum, add it to the comprehensive plan, repass it, you now have a 2023 comprehensive plan. You're welcome. An engineering firm who can charge you $200,000 for a comprehensive plan is not going to tell you that. But I will, because I need that comprehensive plan to win you the grant. But you make one addendum to that comp plan, or you add clean energy communities, climate smart communities to your comp plan. Make an addendum, repass that comp plan, make it the 2023 approved comprehensive plan to continually be looked at every 2 years or ongoing. So, project integrity, grants is a team sport, and it's a long game. I can't write it alone. If I go in and work with a community, I'm partners with that community, I'm talking with them each week, I'm being like, hey, did you see this? Like, FYI, the VGA's in town. Don't try to come up to Webster when the VGA's in town at rush hour. But we work together to say, do you think this is worth it? Do you want to do this? And where can we pull support? I apologize, I think I've overspoke, but I am absolutely open to questions, obviously, and hope that, I think that's the last one.
Yeah?
And thank you.
But you let us ask questions during it, so I don't know if you overspoke.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to continue taking questions. Wait, do I need a camera?
How many people on your team?
It varies because I bring in interns. My strongest, my most longest person with me is Madison, who is in my RFQ. She graduated from the University of Brockport, and just this past weekend graduated from University of Rochester with her master's degree. So I have right now 2 additional people on my team. Come on.
And how many clients do you have right
Right now, and my clients need different things at different times. I probably have about 8 right now. And I work on a strategy that I only take on something that I could handle myself in case someone needed to leave, and that happens, and that's realistic. And I think when you work with a smaller firm, you do have consistency, like, you're going to work with me. This is who you're going to work with. And if you look at the staffs of different firms, they change. And a lot of times the ethics aren't the same, but I'm not going to hire someone who I can't trust 100%. I'm also going to hire someone who I can't trust 100% even if I don't need them. I'm going to bring them on because that's rare to find someone that you can trust, and you've got to go at it full speed. And for example, Maddie had her finals, and she got an extension on writing her 2 ginormous papers, and she was like, oh my gosh, Emily, my teacher gave me an extension. I was like, we'll take it. Like, I'll take the work, you graduate, get that done, and then we'll take care of her grants. Because I'd given her 2 weeks off to finish her finals, and then she got an extension. I need to be able to provide that flexibility, because when you're a grant writer, I'm going to write her on a Saturday and be like, oh my gosh, you're never going to guess what happened. Can you stay up for the next 10 hours and write this? And she'll do it. So it's very much like a family, a lot of give and take.
Emily, I'll tell you this. When we started talking about this, I said, I wonder if there's like a boutique firm out there. I'm not afraid of like a startup or whatever. Wow, it's sitting right in front of us right now. We are very different from the engineering firms that have, all this stuff. Question for you, on your second slide, success, extremely high rate of secured grant awards. You don't lack for confidence. I mean, you say you're great at, can you, not tonight, but would you be able to quantify that for us? Like, based on your MRB experience, I take it MRB is your only formal grant writing experience before you started your own firm, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. With Mary, Josh, whatever, would you be able to quantify that?
Well, I can tell you, it's different.
You don't have to do it tonight, but I just...
Yeah, well, I mean, I did it in the RFQ, and since I wrote the RFQ, I've won another $1 million in funding for my clients. But I have clients in the village of Naples. There is a business called the Sutton Company. They make the Sutton spoons for salmon fishing. The building was falling, and my dear friend who actually used to work at MRB Group, and he ended up starting his own firm, his engineering firm, was like, can you please help this woman? And I was at MRB, I'm like, she can't afford me, but I love learning. I'll learn this grant. And actually had a girlfriend who was looking to build her skill set. I'll have her do the writing and work together. And I got her a $5,000 grant, but that $5,000 is worth more than the $25 million grant I got the city of Buffalo for Complete Streets, because she was gonna go under, and that's 3 generations of a family. So to me, it's hard to quantify it that way. The average grant writer has about a 33% average. I'm in the 90s. Because if I can't win, why would I write it? It's of no service to the community, it only delays the project. It's of no service to me. I work with these agencies all the time. And I have no reason, I don't ever want to lie to them. I'm on the phone with them all the time.
Sure.
They're my friends. And that's the secret, is that network of government. And the same is with the elected officials. I work with them, I met with a Assembly member, lunch for 2 days ago with the supervisor, and I was on the phone with O'Mara's office on the way here. They call me, they say, oh my God, Emily, like, why aren't there more of you? Like, how do I understand these grants? I'm like, I don't know, I gotta give me another 3 days, and I'll keep reading them.
Well, now I do have to cut you short.
Please, yes, of course.
But thank you. I mean, Emily, this was...
This is
you got more time because I think your energy, everybody was, engaged. So
Okay,
thank you.
good.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Please feel free to reach out if you do have a question.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you. I feel like I've been well educated on the grant process.
Yeah.
Thanks, I did not know that.
Good. And don't be afraid. Government can work for the people.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
It's pretty close to being on time.
Oh, yeah, and I'll get it.
No, we are. I mean, we have one more presentation tonight.
Thank you guys so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome.
And I'm assuming that this acronym is for Barton and Judas. Okay. And we have been starting at 6:45, it's only 6:49, we're not, that's not too bad. Huh?
You just.
It is
full
really,
days from
it's
here
unbelievable.
And anything in between.
He's, you know, I always go back, teenage boys.
That's already gone.
Very,
So.
he has very base needs, doesn't he?
on
Food,
an
shelter.
on an
If I
average day-
told you what I've eaten so far today, you would not believe it.
So I just, in an average day, I assume 3 meals. How many snacks? Do you like eat every 2 hours, just keep grazing? Sorry.
Well, I had a huge breakfast, and I had steak and, what? Baked potato for lunch.
I don't get it, the guy weighs about 160 pounds.
In between my lunch and we had a meeting an hour after that, I had a big bowl of frozen cut up fruit.
Where should we set up for?
Snack.
Doesn't help your kid in the supervisor's office enables you candy in your folder.
Well, I kind of enabled myself,
And you
so I
too,
dropped it
Joe.
off in a couple bags.
All right, well, here comes the Barton and the Judas crew, I think.
Derek, thank you.
Yeah, that, oh, there's, now that's a gentleman. I was waiting for that. There you go. Ken, how are you? Good. I don't wanna, did we save the best for last? I don't want that. Will you jump right up on the podium? You got slides that are synced up? And you got handouts? And, away we go.
Thank you.
How you doing? Good, how are you? Good to see you.
You too.
So let's see, we're starting at 6:51 this one. Let's see. Yeah. So Ken, and your crew, you can hold the microphone out if you want to walk around, but please make sure you're talking in the microphone. Or the people at home watching live, or people that watch this on tape, they won't be able to hear you.
The last one.
Okay. Did she tell?
Can you hear me?
You over here?
Good, okay. Well, good evening. Thanks for the invitation to make a brief presentation to the board here. I understand we have about 12 minutes, so we'll keep it short.
Well, that's why you get 8 minutes of questions.
I know, which is fine. So with me tonight, I've got our proposed project manager, Bob Murphy. Bob's a planner. He's our managing planner, and I have Nicole Cleary. She is a managing landscape architect here in the Rochester office. I'm an engineer, so between the three of us, there's 3 different brains that look at municipal funding, and most recently here with phase 2 of your project. So those that may not know Barton and Judas, through this brief agenda, we'll give you a better knowledge of what we do in the line of municipal consulting, which a huge part of that is funding. So here's the agenda that we're going to go through. I'll make some quick introductions. And then between Nicole and Bob, they're going to talk about our ideas for your phase 2 project out at Sandbar Park. Next. So Barton and Judas, we are a multidisciplined consulting firm. We touch all different aspects of municipal engineering and planning. The 3 of us are in sustainable planning and design, which means we plan, fund, design, and construct projects identical to phase 2 of Sandbar Park. We have invested heavily in municipal funding. We've helped the town, of course, get the WEA grant for the plant. We talked about opportunities for phase 2 funding there, and we're knee deep in the administration of the ready-funded pump station project right now. So that said, next slide. We train all of our planners, landscape architects, and engineers in the areas of municipal funding. It's a pretty set process that for a typical project such as Sandbar Park or with what we've done at the plant, it's going to take 1 to 6 years roughly to complete a project. A key part of that, of course, is finding the funding. And there's, as you can see by the flow chart here, typically it begins with the identification of what it is you want to do, what are your needs and goals, and then understanding all the program requirements, particularly those that may be regional to your area, such as the Finger Lakes Regional Economic Development Council. And then reaching out to your community, documenting support for the project, and then ultimately moving as close to shovel readiness, if it's a construction project, that you can. But as we always say, we've said to the town, every project, capital project, has to start somewhere, and it typically starts with a plan. So this is a graphic we've used quite often. You saw it in our proposal. We often refer to program drivers, and all of these projects have multiple or could have multiple drivers that speak to eligibility of different programs. So on the left side here in this little honeycomb with the yellow arrows, what we try to do when we look at a project is maximize co-funding. And if you can read this, these drivers may be focused on improving water quality, addressing and promoting economic development, consolidating services for reducing costs, hardening and resiliency is a big one, climate action, greenhouse reduction, health-based improvements, and of course, income-focused improvements. So when we look at a project through 3 different lenses, we see opportunities for different programs. And as I said, each of these drivers relates to a different funding program. It could be the DEC, it could be USDA federal, it could be Environmental Facilities Corporation. So with that, we've looked at your proposed phase 2 project here, and Nicole's going to speak to some of the ideas we have, and then Bob's going to finish up with our strategy. Mentioning our investment in funding, this is what we call our fine sheet funding infrastructure database. This basically is, I think, what we looked at when we got into speaking about your eligibility for grants for your wastewater treatment plant. This basically identifies all of the various drivers ranging from the economics and the median household incomes of the town's population, the level of poverty, public infrastructure, programs that you've used in the past, and some of the ones that jumped out at us for the town are the fact that with Irondequoit Bay, you've got a DEC classified impaired water body, which is going to promote water quality driven projects, and then of course you've got your LWRP, which you've used for funding a large part of phase 1. Some of the other drivers that we would typically look at relate to income. The town is in good income status. One other opportunity identified down here on the right is the Climate Smart Communities Program, which we discussed with the board on a previous occasion when we were considering increasing your odds of getting funding for certain aspects of your phase 2 wastewater treatment plant. We're going to bring that program up again because there's opportunities within that program to fund pieces of phase 2. So we have a database, and as part of our overall database, we have a history of all of the programs that have been used by municipalities, either grant applications and awards that they've received, and also applications that have been submitted and were not awarded. And we make it a habit of, for all of our clients, that if a project or a grant rather is not awarded, we get on the phone with the agencies and we fully understand what it was that, in that application that did result in the points that we needed or necessary rather to have the funding granted. So we've learned a lot through the years. This is more specific to the consolidated funding application, which just opened earlier this week. Application is due by the end of July. We've been doing this program. We've gotten hundreds of awards for our clients, and we've gotten smarter every year as we debrief on these programs, and we know exactly what it takes to pull together a high-impact funding application. Next slide. Okay.
All right, third time's a charm. Okay, so as Ken mentioned, I'm going to get into kind of more the details of this phase 2 for Sandbar Park. We're familiar with Sandbar Park. We understand what went into phase 1 and what is being constructed out there. So getting into phase 2, we're going to nail down a little bit more into detail for the funding drivers associated with this project. Ken touched on some of the big picture funding drivers. So some of the funding drivers for this phase 2 of Sandbar Park. One big one would be the water quality, which Ken did mention. So Arundequoit Bay is a Class B, New York State DEC impaired water body. There's also been some harmful algal blooms out there, the blue-green algae. So any projects that would look to improve those two items are going to be more appealing to the funding agencies. There's also the bigger picture of neighborhood connectivity. So looking at pedestrian, bicycles, vehicular access to the site. So taking a big look regionally and connecting over to Arundequoit, down to Penfield possibly, and of course in Webster to the neighboring communities and parks and neighborhoods. And then local too, you can see some pink arrows, they're a little faint on the screen, but those are just showing some more residential connections, possibly some additions of sidewalks, bike lanes, kind of getting people to these destinations like the Genesee Land Trust Reserve to the east, and also the Hojag Trail, and then to the west, the Bay Marina Park. And then you'll also see the blue line in Arundequoit Bay. There's also, part of this includes water access. So how are people getting to Arundequoit Bay to experience the water and kind of working through that. So the blue lines are meant to show the bigger connections to the marinas, maybe all the way down to Penfield, Bay Creek area. That's 5 miles, but some people might want to go that distance. Next slide. And then also looking at local or water access within this project. So are there ADA accessible pathways, boardwalks, viewing platforms? Yes, that was in the concept, but just letting you know that those are very important for funding agencies to see that it's including inclusive design for users of all mobility levels and ages. And then the next funding driver specific to this project, green infrastructure. So taking a look at green infrastructure practices like rain gardens, fire retention basins, possibly permeable pavements, and of course bringing out education related to that. So there is some education incorporated in this concept as well. The combination of the education and green infrastructure practices is also really important for the funding agencies and also for the community to make this space the best space it can be. So now we'll let Bob really get into the details.
Thanks, Nicole. Can you guys hear me?
Sure.
So Nicole and Ken outlined what funding drivers we see in this particular project. Those drivers really tell you what we think funding agencies want to fund, what elements of the project that they want to fund. And we found that focusing on those areas help us create grant applications that are attractive to funding agencies and help the town achieve their goals. So connecting these drivers, which you'll see repeated here again with the appropriate programs, is kind of how we focus our grant writing efforts. So with water quality, we've noted that the ability to address water quality issues that make it a Class B impaired water body in Arundequoit Bay is a good way to attack the project from a fundability perspective. That would be really attractive to the DEC. So we look at those programs from the DEC, the Water Quality Improvement Program, which has a number of subcategories in it, along with the Green Innovation Grant Program, as ways that we can tackle parts of the scope of Phase 2 that are specifically tied to funding agencies that want to fund those parts. Then we have neighborhood connectivity. Nicole talked about sidewalk connections to neighborhoods, as well as to more regional trail systems. That'll leverage the investment that any of these agencies is putting into Sandbar Park by getting more people there and making it accessible to more people. And so not only do we look at Department of Transportation funded programs such as the Transportation Alternatives Program, which offers 80% grant, 20% local match, but also sticking with the Department of State LWRP program that funded phase 1. A lot of times if you get an agency that quote unquote committed to a project, they're more likely to fund the next phase because they want to see their project come to fruition. So we would definitely want to subscribe to that program again for phase 2. I also noted here the comprehensive plan and active transportation plans, which I know that the town doesn't necessarily have a specific active transportation plan at this time, but having plans like those in place and updated really bolster your funding opportunities and chances. The last thing any funding agency wants to see is a project that they fund be met with pitchforks. You know, they want to see the ground be cleared, consensus reached, this is what the community wants to see. They don't want to see a project meet significant opposition. So going through the public planning process through plans like that will help you get that consensus. Water access, as Nicole mentioned. Again, we return to LWRP here. The LWRP is a program, as you know, that will fund a wide variety of waterfront-related activities that are illustrated in this plan. But also, in this case, the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation as an option to fund, again, the recreational elements of Phase 2 Sandbar Park. We also mentioned the Ready and Clear programs here as opportunities for future funding for projects that have more to do with accessibility as far as they also promotes resiliency and keeping the water levels where they are and keeping property lines where they are as well. So we can go to the next slide, please. As green infrastructure, logically you start with the Green Innovation Grant Program as ways to fund elements of the project that promote not only hard infrastructure to capture stormwater, but green treatments that can also address water quality. So as we showed in that honeycomb diagram earlier, these drivers overlap with each other. And we try to find those connections. So again, funding agencies are finding bang for the buck. We want to see them achieve more of their goals with your projects. You're more likely to get funded. We also have the WQIP program here, which is specifically tied to water quality as water quality improvement program for more of your riparian systems. So they can leverage each other along with your connectivity. How do you support your sidewalk or your boardwalk? Well, with riparian and shoreline stabilization mechanisms that could be funded through the water quality improvement program. We also have climate smart communities here as an option. We noted, as Ken mentioned in our find sheet database, that the town is currently not a climate smart registered community. If the town considers that, that would make them eligible for a program that we've seen really high hit rates of funding applications for a wide variety of projects. So just something to consider there. And then a new program is actually out as of Monday that we added on here, which the town itself is not eligible for, but could advocate for inclusion in a county-wide resiliency program. So that's a new program out this year. We don't know a lot about it yet, but certain elements of Phase 2 could be funded through that county process as well. We also wanted to touch upon here more of the local fundraising. Most of the programs I just mentioned are state and federal in nature, but this example we showed here is much more local in flair. Even though Green Lakes is a state park, this new signage that was placed there as part of their improvement program was donated by local families who loved their experiences in the park over the years and wanted to have a lasting remembrance of that. So it was really, a fundraiser-driven project there. So certain elements of Sandbar Park could be handled the same way. I've seen it numerous times across the state for benches, light posts, other commemorative signage as well. So more of the small bite-sized pieces that more human scale, you can often get more local fundraising. So go to the next slide, please. So to kind of put a bow on our approach here, as Ken mentioned, we look at funding as a cycle, and where we're at with Sandbar Park is really kind of at 6 o'clock down there, you've got the plan in place, you've already established your vision, you're looking for funding for final design and construction. And, you know, we think that we offer a good approach to doing that. We've included kind of ballpark cost estimates. We don't have the design plans to be able to break out those components that that we mentioned. Like I said before, we want to pull out elements of the project that are attractive to specific funding agencies. So in this scenario that I've proposed on the screen here, we would tackle water access elements with the LWRP. In that case, that program is 75% grant, 25% local match. So that would equate, in our estimate, to roughly $525,000 grant, $175,000 local match, to be paired with a WQIP program application, which would focus on water quality and riparian elements. That at $353,000 for grant and $167,000 as local match. We also want to recommend that the town consider Climate Smart Communities registration as an option for down the line. It wouldn't be an application in year 1, but could be in year 2, which we've outlined here for that neighborhood connectivity through the TAP program from DOT, which is 80% grant, 20% local match at $480,000 grant and $120,000 local match. And then for the resiliency and sustainability elements of the project, could be funded with a focus under Climate Smart Communities at $100,000 grant, $100,000. So what that totals is roughly 1.43 million in grant and $560,000. So we want to make sure that we kind of show this as a scenario, but you know, you've had success with the LWRP. I would look to definitely apply to that program, but we're anxious to hear more about what your priorities are. So, thank you.
I know 12 minutes is tough, Ken. We're at 20. We're at 20. But you guys are the last one, so is there any questions that any of the board members have? Noting that we have another board meeting starting in 18 minutes.
I do not. I thought it was very comprehensive, and we've worked with B&L, so I don't feel the additional questions I have. How many people are local? I worked with you guys, I know that. So I have no further questions.
Anybody else? Good. Ken, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. If you have any
All right.
questions, feel free to let us know.
You got it, okay. I'm going to say that concludes the 5:30 p.m. May 18th Town Board Workshop. And we're going to go off the screen now, Karen, and we'll be back in about 18 minutes to start the 7:30 regular Town Board meeting tonight. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ken.